An old camel was asleep in the desert at night. Along about 2 o'clock in the morning, the wind came up all of a sudden. The sand started swirling around him, woke him up. He couldn't understand what was going on. And then a voice came out of the wind. You are to take the gifts to the baby Jesus. What do you mean, me? Why me? I'm old. My joints are stiff. I've got this back trouble. And I've got gout. Get somebody else to do it. You are the one. And the voice ceased. The wind stopped. The sand settled down around him. And the old camel said, dropped off to sleep. As he was waking up, he was wondering if what he had experienced was just a dream. But then when he was fully awake, here were 3 wise men. And they said to him, you are to take the gifts to the baby Jesus. And the old camel said, just about the time he's getting ready to say, I'm just not going to do it. Some of the young camels that were playing around had heard what was going on, and they came up and they said, he can't take gifts, he's old. Well, that did it. The old camel stood up to his full height and he said, I may be old, but I've got the strength of 10 horses. And one of the young camels said, he said, put the gifts on, I'll take them. So the wise men put the frankincense and the gold and the myrrh on the camel's back, and he started off a little unsteady because his legs really were bothering him. But he knew he had to save face, so he held his head high and said, how far is this? And one of the young camels said, it's going to take all day. And he said, I can do it. So he walked along, and the young camels, because they were young and they played around him, and then one of them ran off ahead of him, and they told people as he was coming that here's the old camel is taking gifts to the newborn baby. And he is old, but he has the strength of 10 horses. And then the people, funny thing happened, the people said, well, if he's taking gifts, what if he can take mine? And at first the old camel said, well, sure, put them on, because they were little. One man had 2 bird cages, some real fancy birds. And somebody else brought out a small gift, and he said, sure, put it on. But then as the day got on and he got tired, the gifts got larger. One wine merchant came out with 2 jugs of wine, pretty heavy. Pretty soon some ladies came out with these big bolts of fancy cloth, and they put it on. And it was getting heavier and heavier. But he knew he had to do it, so he just kept on plodding along. This went on all during the day and into the afternoon, and his load kept getting heavier and heavier, and he'd get tireder and tireder. And then just about the time the sun had set, he looked out over the hill and he could see the star of Bethlehem over the manger. And he thought, I hope I can make it. I'm not sure I can. And about that time he heard a wee little voice that said, I don't have anything that's of any value, but I'd like to give something to the newborn baby. Could you take this straw? The old camel was just about ready to say no. I have reached my limit. And then he looked down and saw this tiny little child, and his heart melted. And he said, of course, my child. And so the little child put the straw on with the other gifts. And the old camel plodded along and struggling, and he got to the manger. And just as he got there, his legs gave out, and he sank to his knees. And a funny thing happened. All the people who were standing around around the baby, when they saw the old camel kneel with all the presents, they knelt too. They didn't realize that he was kneeling primarily because his knees had just given out. But it was a time of reverence, of devotion. And as he knelt there, the baby Jesus reached out with one finger and touched him on the nose. And all of a sudden, the old camel felt strong. Maybe not as strong as 10 horses. That's overstating it. But he felt strong again. And one of the young camels that had made so much fun of him when he started off on this journey had become impressed with him and said, you know, from now on, you're going to be known as Hashmaka. That'll be your name. And the old camel said, Hashmaka. I like the sound of it, but what does it mean? And the young camel said, it means one who is not too old to be useful. Now, isn't that a good story? I tell it to the children, but I always hope that the grandparents are listening too. Hashmaka. Not too old to be useful.